the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
Most of us blacks, or Negroes as he called us, really thought we were free without being aware that in our subconscious, all those chains we thought had been struck off were still there. And there were many ways where what really motivated us was our desire to be loved by the white man. Malcolm meant to lance that sense of inferiority. He knew it would be painful. He knew that people could kill you because of it, but he dared to take that risk.
He was saying something over and above that of any other leader of that day, while the other leaders were begging for entry into the house of their oppressor. He was telling you to build your own house.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. Today's guest, Kevin Jackson. Jusani Morris, how are you, my man?
I'm good.
What do you think about Malcolm X? Did you see the speech properly?
Yes, I actually have. I liked him. I think he was a great role model for the black the black race, and he fought for the things that Martin Luther King also fought. But the difference with him was that he took a different approach. And whereas Dr. King wanted peace and peace for everyone, Malcolm X believed in self-defense, and because the black race was being abused by the white race at that time, he wanted to defend the black race with a war.
Right.
I think that was a respectable approach. I don't think it was the best approach, however, but I think he had his own way of doing things, and he affected the black race a lot, and he affected the world a lot, and I am glad that he had such an impact on the world that he did.
Why is it at 12 you have such a thorough understanding of all these things?
My parents I was interested in this topic, but my parents actually really pushed me to learn the experience of the lives of past black people and black icons, and they thought it was crucial to my learning because we've realized that in the school systems they do not teach black history.
That's right.
And it's something that we as black children need to know.
Right.
And to anybody in my hearing right now, what I would try to do is research one black icon that you know about every night, and it helps with your learning, and you'll understand your background more, and it makes you more confident as a person.
Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous.
How old
What
are
were you doing at 12?
He somewhat reminds me of myself. I was being mentored by Alma John from WWRL at his age, doing oratory. And the fact that you sat down and looked at the approaches of these two men and have come up with your own analysis of which was preferred or which one might have been better, but yet understanding the importance of both of the two. Most young folks your age are not sitting down to do this, and the fact that you have the kind of parents that you have,
that's the most
it's a
important
tribute
part.
to them, and it's a tribute to you, because you are taking in the information that your parents are giving you and not just absorbing it. You're doing your own reading, you're doing your own research to come up with your own analysis of these two great icons, as you call them. And the fact that you said we should read about one icon every day, because here we are in Black History Month, it tied up the routine Black history. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth,
Marcus Garvey.
There are thousands upon thousands of people to study and to know about. the piece I sent you on Montford Point, on the Marines at Montford
But
Point.
you know what we're missing? We're talking about people that are dead and gone.
Yeah.
This young man at 12 has experienced the first black president. So his mindset is completely
from
beyond
ours, yeah.
anything that we can imagine. And we have a young man that looking at the past and subjecting that, but his whole future lies in the possibilities are endless. Here, you're the president of NAN Youth Huddle, and you have everything in perspective. There's limitless, nothing, there's nothing you can't do.
Thank you.
All right? Now, I want to see how impressive, I want everybody to see how impressive you were at Martin Luther King Day with the mayor of the city and the governor being there. And this young man makes a little speech there that floored everybody. And just play that piece with Jusani. Now, he's 12 years old, mind you. Come on. Now, I mean, that's so impressive. Now, I want to know who wrote the speech.
I usually write my speeches. My mom looks over them sometimes, as she does with my schoolwork. But usually, I write the speech, and then she tells me what she thinks about it. And trust me, she's not afraid to rip my piece up and make me write it again.
Your mother's an angel. You've got the right mother, you know. Thank God for her.
Yes, it helps me a lot with my work. And
Because she don't take no stuff.
Yeah, helps me a lot, actually.
And that's exactly who you're gonna. That's your God. You came from her womb. She created you, and she's gonna make sure you're right. And you'll learn to appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all do. But you're on the right track. Well, where do you get this sense of? I mean, we all want to. I mean, I feel that in my heart. I mean, you bring tears to my eyes because I know your mother and your family, and I watch you run around and act like a kid, and she says, she puts her. But then you come out with this true sense of spirituality. I mean, you can feel it. Everybody in the room can feel it. Where does this come from? You've been here before?
I've never been here before, actually. I don't know where I get it from. I feel like it's the fact that I feel like my voice should be heard, especially because I love speaking about the history of black people and the history of the black race and the future of the black race as well, and the present of the black race, because it's important. All three pieces of that is important to our growth as a society and as a community. And to be a great nation and to be equal as we strive to be, we need to know the history of everyone. But for the black race to build that self-esteem that we need to become equal, we need to know the history, the past, and the future of our race and of our community.
You realize how special you are, you know.
Thank you.
And it's because of your mother and your parents that they've guided you under this important time, because you've had the fortune of the self-esteem of having a black president. So you don't know anything. The world is limitless to you. As a, you know, I'm a little up there in age, but I didn't have any kind of vision like that. When I was a kid, you know, we were considered to, well, not in my case. I was in New York, so I was limitless for me. But I mean, down south, you were belittled and portrayed as ignorant and so forth and so on. But that's the past century, matter of fact. This is the 21st century. We're talking about the 20th century. And this, I mean, it's great to see your future. I mean, we can see the future of the black race right in you. Mm-hmm. To find what you come up with this cause of finding something worth dying for. Did you see how that hit Sharpton? Did you see the facial expression he put on his face? I mean, you remind him of him. And that's obviously why he had you up there speaking.
Thank you.
So thank you.
That was one of Martin's great statements. And if a man hasn't found something for which he's willing to die for, he isn't fit to live.
Yeah.
And reading, I can see, I don't know your mother, but I'm thinking of my mother because she was the same way. She had us read. She said, you got nothing to do, go read a book. So we could read a book in a night, sit down and read a book, but I want to recommend a great compilation of work to you, J.A. Rogers, The World's Great Men of Color. It's the world's men and women of great color. It's 2 volumes. It's about 600 or 700 pages, the 2 volumes combined. But if you're reading about one person per day, it'll take you a few years to read, because J.A. Rogers covered over 5,000 years of our history in those 2 volumes. And he talks about the great people that we don't even know about, that lived thousands of years ago, that contributed through science and medicine and technology and the historical things that went on way before slavery, because our history doesn't start with slavery. And that's what he had researched, The World's Great Men of Color, Volumes 1 and 2 by J.A. Rogers.
All right, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you update to the 20th century. The conflict, I'm always saying that, I mean, racism is a given to me. And the way to fight racism is to get along with each other. Because I think the real true battle is how we treat one another. And this is important. So what I'm going to show you is the conflict between Martin and Malcolm. All right? And here's a debate from the two of them. You get a good perspective of the sequence of how Malcolm started out, as you saw in the beginning, that was the 60s, and how the movement of Malcolm and Martin conflicted. All right, just saw that piece of the debate between Malcolm and Martin.
The white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolent. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's this American white man. And they have proved it throughout the country by the police dogs and the police clubs. 100 years ago, they used to put on a white sheet and use a bloodhound against Negroes. Today, they have taken off the white sheet and put on police uniforms. They've traded in the bloodhounds for police dogs, and they're still doing the same thing. And just as Uncle Tom, back during slavery, used to keep the Negroes from resisting the bloodhound or resisting the Ku Klux Klan by teaching them to love their enemy or pray for those who use them despitefully, today Martin Luther King is just a 20th century or modern Uncle Tom or a religious Uncle Tom who is doing the same thing today to keep Negroes defenseless in the face of attack that Uncle Tom did on the plantation to keep those Negroes defenseless in the face of the attack of the Klan in that
Well,
day.
I don't think of love as, in this context, as emotional bosh. I don't think of it as a weak force. But I think of love as something strong and that organizes itself into powerful direct action. Now, this is what I tried to teach in the struggle in the South, that we are not engaged in a struggle that means we sit down and do nothing. That there's a great deal of difference between non-resistance to evil and non-violent resistance. Non-resistance leaves you in a state of stagnant passivity and deadened complacency, wherein non-violent resistance means that you do resist in a very strong and determined manner. And I think some of the criticisms of nonviolence, or some of the critics, fail to realize that we are talking about something very strong, and they confuse non-resistance with nonviolence.
The goal of Dr. Martin Luther King is to give Negroes a chance to sit in a segregated restaurant beside the same white man who had brutalized them for 400 years. The goal of Dr. Martin Luther King is to get Negroes to forgive the people who have brutalized them for 400 years by lulling them to sleep and making them forgetting what those whites have done to them. But the masses of black people in America today don't go for what Martin Luther King is putting down. As you said in one of your articles, it's psychologically insecure or something of that sort. I forget how you put it. But you didn't endorse what Martin Luther King was doing yourself.
I do not reject his goals of full integration and full equality rights for American citizens. Do you reject these goals?
If you don't think that he's walking on the right road, I'm quite sure you don't agree that he'll get to the right place. And if you would classify his method as psychologically unrealistic, I think that if a man's method is psychologically unrealistic, which means the road or the means or the method that he's using, I think as a psychologist, you would be very doubtful that he would reach the right.
If anyone has ever lived with a nonviolent movement in the South, from Montgomery on through the Freedom Rides and through the sit-in movement and the recent Birmingham movement, and see the reactions of many of the extremists and reactionaries in the white community, he wouldn't say that this movement makes, or this philosophy makes him comfortable. I think it arouses a sense of shame within him often, in many instances. I think it does something to touch the conscience and establish a sense of guilt. Now, so often people respond to guilt by engaging more in the guilt-evoking act in an attempt to drown the sense of guilt. But this approach certainly doesn't make the white man feel comfortable. It disturbs the other thing, conscience, and it disturbs this sense of contentment.
Nothing will they ever do. They will always talk it, but they won't practice it. And with the Supreme Court, if the NAACP can tell me that they want a desegregation decision for me 10 years ago, but yet the schools haven't been desegregated, as I say, this is a victory with no victory. It's a victory that you can talk about, but it's a victory you can't show me. So if you represent the NAACP and you're telling me about this great victory you won for me, when I look at you, I have to conclude that either you have been duped yourself or else you are trying to dupe me. And in most instances where the civil rights struggle is involved, there is no civil rights leader can point to me one concrete gain, practical gain, that black people have made in the civil rights field in this country, not only during the past 10 years, but during the past 100 years.
I don't think there's any real organization to the riots. I think they grow out of the conditions that I've mentioned all along. And as long as these intolerable conditions are there, as long as the Negro finds himself living every day in a major depression, then every city will sit on a powder keg and can explode over the slightest incident. I feel that killing is a very tragic way to deal with any social problem. There is no violent solution to the problem that the Negro confronts in this country, and this is why I have constantly said that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. After all, the Negro ends up on the losing end. We can't win a violent revolution. Most of the persons killed in riots are Negroes themselves. The persons who end up not being able to get milk for their children are Negroes because things where they have to live are destroyed. So there's no practical or moral answer in the realm of violence to the Negro's problem. But I do understand the sociological, the psychological, and the economic reasons.
The problem can be solved. First, the white man and the black man have to be able to sit down at the same table. The white man has to feel free to speak his mind without hurting the feelings of that Negro. And the so-called Negro has to feel free to speak his mind without hurting the feelings of the white man. Then they can bring the issues that are under the rug out on top of the table and take an intelligent approach to get the problem solved. That's the only way that they'll ever do it. We need an action program while we are Muslims, or while we are Christians, or while we are whatever we are. We still need an action program that will eliminate these evils that are in our community. And this is what we're trying to do with the Muslim Mosque Incorporated.
Do you consider yourself militant?
I consider myself Malcolm.
Well, I think we have to agree that this appears to be the result of an internal conflict within the black nationalist movement. So I think the first thing that needs to be done is for a conference of goodwill to take place between black nationalist leaders. This was why I suggested a few days ago that the followers of the late Malcolm X and the followers of Elijah Muhammad should sit down at the peace table together, so to speak, and discuss this problem and try to reach some understanding. I don't think, and I'm sure, that nothing can be accomplished by violence. It only leads to new and more complex social problems. I think it is unfortunate for the black nationalist movement. I think it is unfortunate for the health of our nation.
Critique of seeing this, of course, you can see it. Can we get what's one back down here? Because I got an echo out here. problem on the air. Due to technical difficulties, we're spaced out and going back in time. But we're live from Manhattan Neighborhood Network. As soon as we get a facilitator out, well, I'll try to continue, but it's kind of difficult. So, I wonder how it sounds out there. Anyway, what a serious note to have a problem on, right? But this is what happens when you're live. Well, just give us a minute. I'm a big and we're live. And our hero is here. Are we back to normal?
I think so.
All right. What happened was you made a comment in the middle of this, which was so insightful. I mean, people can look at this now, but this is what's so interesting about history. But see, I was in the middle of all that. When Malcolm died, I was 24 years old, almost as old as my grandson here. And I saw the conflict. It was from Elijah Muhammad having 6 or 7 young girls pregnant and giving them babies, and Malcolm being a truist, knowing you had to be honorable, and back in the 60s, this wasn't done. And it was a fight between Farrakhan and Malcolm. Mm-hmm. And supposedly the feds were in the middle of all this and set it all up. In other words, they know how to get us to fight each other with some stuff that was actually, you know, the privacy of our movement was supposed to, people say we were supposed to put our laundry out there. Elijah Muhammad was spreading his superior seed and impregnating, like we do in Africa. You give an Indian, you know, a chief, all the young girls he wants. All right, so this is doesn't go well in the 60s in America, in Black America in particular. And Malcolm was an honorable man. He didn't think that you should have more than one wife, more or less. So now, what is this perspective that you saw from watching this tweet, the rivalry between Malcolm and
Martin?
Well,
there are actually 2 things that I noticed. The first thing that I noticed was that Malcolm X took an approach of fighting back with physicality and arms, and he showed a militant behavior. And it wasn't going to get the black race anywhere, because if you fight fire with fire, usually no one wins. But at that point, whites had more power than the black race did. And so if we started an attack, the attack would come right back to us, and the black race would be exterminated. The other thing that I realized was that when Martin Luther King was speaking, I realized that the opposite of hate is love, and love is the only thing that can stop hate, whereas the same thing with justice and segregation. The only thing that can stop justice and injustice and segregation is peace. Mm-hmm. And I think, although Malcolm X wanted the best for our race, I think he failed to see that vision. And I like the approach of both of these iconic men, but I think that Dr. Martin Luther King had the smarter approach, and he used his willpower and his brains to get to the approach and boost the black race.
All right, you know what I'm going to do? I want you to run the other piece on Malcolm, and we're going to show you Malcolm a month before he died. All right? Now, this is in London, and it's a piece that I play all the time, but I wanted Jusani to see it to give him a little respect of how people grow and how we all evolve and how we have to evolve as a race. And he's the product of us evolving. And so let's play the last piece on Malcolm, and we'll come back right after this. All right?
I read once, passingly, about a man named Shakespeare. I only read about him passingly, but I remember one thing he wrote that kind of moved me. He put it in the mouth of Hamlet, I think it was, who said, to be or not to be. He was in doubt about something. Whether it was nobler in the mind of man to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, moderation, or to take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. And I go for that. If you take up arms, you'll end it. But if you sit around and wait for the one who's in power to make up his mind that he should end it, you'll be waiting a long time. And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, browns, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
Now, as you see, that was a far cry from the first Malcolm we saw. See, this was a month before he was murdered. Now, I'd like to discuss what happened to Malcolm. And what we see as the elders here, there's a conflict, and you know, the powers that be have always divided and conquered us. And you can see how the conflict was going, and you see how he wound up at the end. He realized that the only way was to get along with everybody. Sort of like where we are now. Now, the conflict today is we have a lot of people not respecting Obama. Now, why? Here's a man who's accomplished the greatest feat that we could, it's possible. Become the leader of the free world. And yet we have blacks out there, whites out there, have everything to do about racism and keeping a man down and not benefiting from our growth. Or benefiting the way Malcolm did. He grew. Grandson on the show today.
I have to keep it moderate today, but to an extent, I would agree. You know, that's more, to me, in my views, that's more of a position that was chosen and strategically put there in that sense of having a black president, especially when the fact that he still has the same bloodline as every other president that we had, except for the 8th president. You start to see the bigger picture, the bigger game that's, really going on.
Explain the bloodline.
Well, the bloodline, I believe, goes back to a queen, I forget her name, in England, and it's all the one blood a scheme that's going on. It's been researched time after time, and it's been proven, and the only reason why the 8th president that we've had wasn't a part of the bloodline was because they didn't have anyone at that time to sit there in that office. But it's bigger than just us having, like I said, a black president. There hasn't been anything done in the plight from when I was 12 to when he's 12 now, in the immediate problem. People always want to bring up health insurance and things that does matter, but in the immediate issues of the black man and the black woman.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that Malcolm said in one of the clips was that we have to get to a point where the white man can speak
right,
and not be afraid of what the black man is going to think, and the black man should be able to speak to the white man and not be afraid of what he's going to think.
Mm-hmm.
That dialogue has yet to happen.
Isn't it happening today?
No, it's not.
On public access?
No, it's not happening. We see the President of the United States who cannot dialogue with a Congress where
Well, we know why.
Racist people,
Right.
in their thinking, will exert the utmost disrespect, not only for the office, but especially for the man.
Right.
But will conspire and commit acts of treason against the country, and they boldly stated it, and nothing has happened. So this elephant in the room, no one's talking about it. The president hasn't talked about it. The attorney general hasn't talked about it. And most recently, with the Super Bowl, the quarterback for the Panthers,
Cam Newton.
he made a bold statement this week, and I respect him.
What did he say?
People were criticizing. Go ahead, take the lead.
Well, when I heard the statement that Cam Newton said, he was talking about how people were afraid of him because they had no one to compare him to as a black quarterback. And I agreed with that statement. And that's why I want him to win Super Bowl 50, because it's the biggest Super Bowl that's happened so far. It's a half century since Super Bowls has started, and he's going to win.
Now, who was the first black man to win a Super Bowl?
Not good with football.
Now, we had a black man win the Super Bowl 20 years ago. There was nothing. There was no regard given. There was no, I'm going to Disneyland.
Who was it?
Warren Moon is in my mind. It wasn't.
I was going to say Warren Hill, but that's not his name. I think it was Warren Moon. For the Houston Oilers.
But there was no respect given him after winning the Super Bowl.
Right.
So when I saw this young man speaking, you know, they don't like the way he scores, the way he is jubilant in the end zone. They don't like it. He said, the reason they don't like it is because I'm black.
Right.
And he said it very boldly. If I was a white guy, it wouldn't be an issue. All right? I can't worry about their problem. He said, I revel in what I do. I like the accomplishment. You know, and he ran over one of the cameramen had one of the football from a touchdown. He picked it up, and he ran over to him, got the football, and ran back down the line and jumped up and gave it to a young black girl in the stands. See, he is not afraid to be who he is in the presence of everybody. And he's not concerned, as Malcolm said, you should be able to express yourself and not be afraid, as long as you're being respectful, and you know, you're not disrespecting anybody. But there's always this ongoing criticism. David Dinkins, when he was mayor, he wears sharp suits, and he's a washroom attendant, and there's always that sleight of hand.
So you see this whole criticism of Barack Obama as being following suit.
It's the ongoing problem. It's the ongoing issue. Race is not being discussed.
Well, what about Donald Trump and his nonsense?
Oh, jeez.
I mean, he's a loud New Yorker. That's all he is.
No, he's
He's
not.
a joke is what he
But
is.
he's doing us all a big favor, doing what he's doing.
And we
He's
saw what he
showing
got.
us what everybody thinks, and now we get to see the insight of people.
That's
but
right.
You see, the real thing is, all Donald Trump is a joke.
Right?
I don't think he should be running for president. I don't think he has the resources to run for president.
Right.
He has it financially. He does not have it mentally, emotionally, or
well said.
in any spiritual way.
You want to sit over here?
He acts like a child in the manner that he's very immature.
Amen.
He takes shots at his, not only Democrats, but his fellow Republicans.
Right.
And
well, that's the whole purpose he's there for.
Exactly. All they want
I
is
think
for
he's
him
a Democratic
for
plant, actually.
He's
do.
a jester. He's a court jester.
He's showing us. Look at Ted Cruz. Now, I don't think there's a senator in the Senate that's endorsed him, and he's a Canadian.
Born in Canada.
And as soon as, if he's ever approved of his to run for president, you're going to have lawsuits all over the place against him. So it's showing Democrats. Now, what do you think about Hillary and Bernie?
I like Bernie Sanders' view because he's very rigid, and he also doesn't care what other people think. And he is white. that's not a problem. And as Malcolm X said, we need to learn to work with everyone,
That's true.
especially when people are working for our health and
That's
for
right.
us.
Right.
I think I would love to have people vote him in as president because I feel like he knows what he's doing, and he's very confident in his mind and
You know, he's
confident-
my age. We're the same age.
Well, you're not beat up and run down.
I mean,
You know,
well,
hey,
I'm blessed.
And words of wisdom come from his as they come from you and other people of past generations. I feel like we need to bridge the gap between whites and blacks. And I feel like Bernie Sanders will be able to do that. And I think he also, the other thing I like about him, and the thing I like in Hillary Clinton too, but I like Bernie Sanders more, is that they have respect for Obama.
Okay.
I like that because they have actually seen what he's done. And whereas sometimes Hillary Clinton, her perspective I don't agree with, I usually like the perspective that Bernie Sanders takes, and I want him to be voted in for president.
So you've been paying attention.
Yeah.
Boy, if you could vote, I mean, we have some good time, huh?
Well,
You put in perspective from
he's paying
from the
attention.
mouths of babes.
You know, and we always think that our young people are not focused on these key issues.
But see, he has the fortunate of seeing, he's up to date on all the modern, I mean, he gets knowledge all over the place. You don't have to read anything, you just text something. I mean, he got the world at his fingertips.
But he's definitely reading.
Well, you're reading too, but I mean, well, that in combination with what's available to you, though. I mean, you can see the world in an instant.
You know, Martin, going back to Martin and Malcolm, there never was a revolution. They said the revolution would not be televised.
But it's being televised.
There was no revolution in the terms that Malcolm spoke. There was no physical, violent upheaval. I remember when Martin died, I was on Fort Dix. You know, and you've been in the arsenals, you've seen the stuff, and the stuff that we saw back in the day is nothing compared to what's in the arsenals today.
Violence,
so there could never be a violent upheaval by any group of people in this country.
Look what ISIS is trying to do.
You know, and we can't carpet bomb ISIS either. But the idea that violence will bring it doesn't work. 40 years ago this June 16th, the Soweto uprising. That was young people in South Africa who modeled their movement on the civil rights movement in this country a few years after Martin had been killed, and they gave their lives in that march in Soweto. The world saw children being killed, summarily killed, shot. As they walked ahead, the elders were behind, the children walked into the fray. And that is what broke the back of the apartheid system. It wasn't guns and bullets. And that note to, if a man hasn't found something for which he's willing to die for, he isn't fit to live, that struck home. When the people saw that violence in Soweto and the children being killed, just as we saw it here in the bombing of the church. The 4 girls were killed.
Well, I see today in front of me, I'll hope in our future here in Jusani, I mean, what you've given us today is an example of what can happen when your self-esteem is there and you have parents that are guiding you properly. I mean, and you're bringing out your spirituality and it's showing just and keeping up with information. So you give us hope that anything's possible, just as Obama gave me hope. I've been saying since he was elected, he's a blessing from God, for me. I mean, it don't get any better than that.
He
for
saved
me.
the sinking ship.
I mean, he's done wonders with this country, contrary to what you
completely
think is.
turned it around from George Bush.
I mean, but only God could have put somebody like that in that position. See, the spirituality involved with all this stuff. Even Donald Trump being in the middle of all this garbage, showing the buffoonery of the country and how many people are warped in their sense of right and wrong. When they can go to a loudmouth New Yorker and see a presidential potential and that, I mean, God, what has become of us? I mean, what's the world going to look at if we put Donald Trump? I mean, but what is he? He's making a fool of the other people that are running, in particular Chris Christie, New Jersey, across the river. He's still got to worry about Bridgegate. When he's running for president, he got to worry about Bridgegate. He's going to be indicted before.
He's not even in the running.
I mean,
really.
you know what I mean? He's getting 2%, but he's got all this mouth. All the people with mouth and claiming that they have the ability to become the next president of the United States, when we've had the best man for the job that I've seen and that ever existed, Barack Obama. And he's inspired people like yourself to show that we as a people can, Marcus Garvey said, you know, up you mighty people. You can be what you want to be.
Where are you 20 years from now? Where are you 20 years from now?
I want to be a lawyer.
Uh-oh. You know what they say about lawyers?
No.
They have to be good liars.
I think I'm pretty good at that. My sister is taking LSATs right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I was actually trying to learn what I could learn from her. And what I realized is that a lot of it is about logic. And I like logic games. I do logic games at math. During my free time, I play logic games. And I realized that the profession of a lawyer is protecting people, especially people who are disenfranchised and marginalized.
Okay.
And I realized that that's something I really want to do. And I feel like that's something I've already started to do.
Okay.
And I want to use my words instead of my physical actions. And I think that that's why I joined the movement in the first place.
Right.
And I'm very glad to be a part of it.
Well, you're a representative of what's possible.
I was talking with a federal judge yesterday, not unlike yourself, when he was young. Grew up in Brooklyn, went to Boys High.
Oh, boy.
Judge Sterling Johnson, he's the federal judge in the Eastern District. And 2/3 of all attorneys in the United States went to Howard University. 2/3. And there are various types of law. There's international. There's law for every type of enterprise, you know, in the world, beyond criminal law, defense, and prosecution. Keep in mind, there are multitudinous scholarships available. Harvard Law School has scholarships for African American students. And we're gonna stay in touch, because I want you to meet, there are some attorneys I know I want you to meet. They do different types of law. They're black attorneys, and they're very accomplished at what they do. But you need to be mentored and just move and keep reading, because you're gonna do a lot of reading in preparation for law school and reading the briefs. They had us in high school reading constitutional law, the briefs of the different decisions, and the system. So you're on the right path. You know where you want to go. Don't worry about where everybody else is going. Let them go, because most of them don't know where they're going. All right? When there's a stampede, the cattle can't see where they're going. You step out of the crowd, you got yourself focused, you go on, because you're only going to be in the prep. This is your prep stage. Up to age 20, 22, 23, 24, that's preparing you for the rest of your life. So you're putting in the hard work now, because if you put in the hard work now, from 24 to 80 will be a lot smoother. And unfortunately, most of our young people are not putting in the prep work, so from 24 to 80 is a rough road. Take this time now, hammer out the rough, so that you can smooth out the rest, because you're going to live a long time. You're not dying at 20 or 18 or 17. You've got decades to go, and you're preparing yourself right now.
You and I both know why you're where you are. It's your mother. That's it. No getting around that. Right?
My mother and God.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right. She's absolutely gorgeous and loves you to death, and will make sure you're right. And that's what happens to all of us. My mother was an angel. And I have that in me. I have that sense of spirituality.
You're not that angelic.
No, I got I got God and the devil in me like everybody else. You have to fight that devil in you, and you try to bring out the better half of yourself. Any comments, young man? Kevin? About what we've been talking about?
I wanted to go back to, what was it? Martin Luther King said, when he said, if you have nothing to
die for, you're not fit to live.
Right. In that same instance, so it's, to me, it says, like, if you have nothing to die for, then you have to find something to live for. And where we are at right now, I'm feeling like we're almost at the point where it's like we have nothing to die for. We've been stripped of so much. So now we have to find something to live for. And this is our reason to find something to live for.
Amen.
You know, and we have to do whatever that takes to change to continue to get to the rest of his crowd, because it's easier to teach a child than it is to repair a broken man.
Right. But look what we can learn from a child with the new eyes.
Right, right. But we have to give them we have to make sure that they have the correct layout instead of the layout. Because one thing about history, we know about history, is that no one learns from history. So we have to now learn from history and not take the same steps, but guide him into the different directions that is going to actually make a difference. Because the government killed Martin, and he was peaceful. They also killed Malcolm. So either way you look at it, it's not just about nonviolence or defending yourself or being peaceful. It's about really.
Well, you have to remember, I was around when Martin died and Malcolm, and nobody. When Malcolm died, they couldn't even find any place to bury him. They buried him in a church right next to where I was brought up on 147th Street, Charles Church, because they couldn't. Nobody wanted to take it on because they didn't. Everybody wondered what the hell was going on, right? And then when Martin died, the people were shunning Martin. Why? Because he went against the war instead of sticking with civil rights. Now, I think Johnson had a lot to do with all that stuff, because Johnson helped Martin with the civil rights movement, and all of a sudden Martin supposedly turned on him because he was against the war.
That's the reason why Johnson didn't run again.
Right.
He said, I will not seek the nomination for the presidency of the United States.
Right.
And Martin was adamant about them stopping the war.
Right.
And
his last speech was made at Riverside Church exactly a year before he died. On April 4th, 1967, Martin gave his last speech, and it was about Vietnam.
In New York.
In New York.
Yeah. Why
Riverside
I opposed
Church.
the war in Vietnam.
Right. And he died exactly April 4th. Now, let's show Martin before we go out. I want to show Martin his last speech, his last sermon before we leave. Play that speech. I was 24 in this day. This is April 3rd. You have that ready for me? Let's play Martin.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
As you see, as we're about to end, that's the Martin I knew. And it used to be a time where I couldn't see this and not cry. Because this man knew he was coming. He had served his time and he was doing God's work. And as a result, the following day he was murdered. But he was taken out by the powers that be because he's doing too much good for us as a people. And so we only have 30 seconds left. And Jusani, we're going to have you back again. Because I love your perspective. I mean, to see things through your eyes is beautiful. I mean, you have a good outlook and a solid background, and thank God for your mother, you know? And she's going to see this and be proud.
Keep it up, young king.
Yes. God bless you, man. The God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience and more about Black history. Peace. Power to the people.
Black is beautiful.
Pastor, I want you to know